Hello everyone, I'm Arpin, high school senior from India who loves to create things all the way from electronics, APIs, CLIs. I've ventured into all of it. That's why I'm so excited to be co-hosting this very special AMA with my friend and fellow hack lover Neela. And it just so happens that it's her birthday today. So let's wish her a happy birthday.
Happy
Happy birthday!
birthday!
Everybody
Happy
say
Happy
that.
birthday.
birthday.
Happy
Happy
birthday.
birthday!
Happy birthday.
Happy
Okay,
birthday.
so just a bit about me. I joined Hack Club about 7 months ago, and it's been one of the best decisions of my life. Like I've learned so much and met so many amazing people through this community, through Hack Club, through Epoch, and so on. When I found out that we were hosting our very own Zach f- for an AMA, I was over the moon. Now imagine my excitement when I got the message that I was invited to co-host this AMA with our founder, our CEO, whatever. So now on to Nira.
Hello, I'm Nila Palmuram, and I'm a high school senior from India, and I'm currently studying in an international boarding school. So I'm very passionate about women's role in technology. And so right now I'm working on small projects to support the existing women in the tech industry. Alongside that, I'm practicing my Swift skills and learning a little bit about blockchaining and cryptocurrency. So I've been in the Hack Club community for like almost 2 years now, and I'm so honored to be co-hosting the very creator of this wonderful teen-centric venture. So now to introduce the one who needs no introduction, like Arpan said, our very own Zach Latta. Say hi, Zach.
Hey everybody. I'm just so excited to join all of you here today. And it's really meaningful for me to spend this time with all of you because I started Hack Club when I was 16. Growing up, I went to schools that didn't teach coding. And like most schools in the US and around the world, they still don't teach any coding. And I was kind of lucky enough to be part of the first generation of people that didn't really know a world without the internet. Like everyone who was a few grades ahead of me would talk about like remembering when their family got dial-up or got, some sort of internet access at home. And for me, like that was just always a constant. And as a kid, I loved video games. It just felt like computers were like the most magical devices in the world. And just it felt like that's where the secrets of the universe lied. And as a kid, I really wanted to know how they worked. I really wanted to know, like, is there a way I can be a part of this? But it always felt a little inaccessible and frankly, a little intimidating. I started teaching myself to code when I was a kid. I just Googled online. I Googled how do you, build a website, and I started following tutorials. But it was always a solitary experience. And I really wanted to have other friends my age that kind of shared my love and passion for it. And I really struggled to find that community. And I would go as far as to like go on like IRC forums and stuff and pretend to be an adult in my 20s to like try and connect with people when I was like 12. And when I made it to high school and became a teenager, I think I felt that like loneliness in a very acute way. Like I think it can be very hard to be someone where it feels like you haven't really found your people yet. And I certainly felt like I had not found my people. And after my freshman year of high school, which is the first year of high school here in the US, I dropped out of high school and I moved out of my parents' home when I was 16. I moved to San Francisco where I became a programmer. I helped build two apps that got popular on the App Store. And then I started Hack Club to really try and create the sort of community that I so desperately wish I had when I was a teenager. And it's so meaningful being with all of you here today because that was 9 years ago. And today, like Hack Club is this incredible community of young people from like 38 countries all over the US, all over the world. And like I think that Hack Club is still in its early days as a community, right? Like the majority of people who would love to be part of Hack Club have just simply never heard of it. But like being here with all of you today, like, and seeing that like other young people have found a space for other people like them, where like you've connected with others and like, kind of, it feels like a small part of that Hack Club vision has become real. And that is very personally meaningful to me. And I'm so excited to spend the next hour with all of you. So thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks for the introduction. Now, before we start, here are some little rules. Please raise your hand on Zoom if you have a question to ask, and Neela and I will call on you. And please, be sure to say your name, what high school or city are you from, and country. That matters. Also, we wanted to me and Zach and everybody here wanted to make this AMA into more of a town hall discussion into what you think Hack Club should be like, or what you believe in the future of Hack Club. So feel free to include questions about the future of Hack Club, how you think it should be shaped and whatnot. With that, I will start this with my very own first question. So, Zach, how do you see Hack Club influencing or shaping the broader tech industry in the years to come?
Yeah, I mean, on first, the vision for Hack Club was always wanting it to just be great and eccentric and weird and funny and unlike any other space on the internet. Like, I just wanted Hack Club to be the best place to be a teenager who loved computers. But when I think about the world more broadly, like, I think a lot of people, when they think about computers, they think about them as like a means for a career or a means to make a lot of money in the future. But for me, computers have always felt like a means for self-expression. And I think that as computers become something that all of our world relies on, I mean, we're already there today, and we think about like, what are the paths that are available to people in the future? Right now, when you're a young person and you go into high school, at least here in the US, there's a few kind of paths that exist for you. You know, if you get into sports, there's a whole ecosystem of things that support you around being in sports. Like, there's stuff happening in middle school, there's stuff from your parents, there's stuff happening at the school, there's stuff happening outside the school. It's a whole ecosystem you're a part of where you can make like being really competitive and really serious about sports the primary thing you do outside of class. And you spend like hundreds of hours on it each year. And the same is true for like math, or the same is true for like band or other things like that. And right now, if you're a young person, you're interested in computers, there's basically nothing, like nothing at all. Like, maybe there's one class at your school, or like maybe there's one hackathon that happens near you each year, but it's not comprehensive. It might not be very high quality. And I think the most important thing is, like, oftentimes the few technical spaces that do exist tend to not yet embody like these hacker values of like, computers give us agency. Computers give us a language to express ourselves. Computers give us a means to, like, as young people, actually build real things in the real world for other people around us. And that is like an incredibly powerful thing that I think needs to be captured and exists for every young person on the planet. So, like, you know, fast forward 10 years, like, my hope and my vision is I want to live in a world where Hack Club is like helped create an incredible hacker ecosystem for teenagers. Like, there's 15 million teenagers in the US. I want to live in a world where like 1 million young people each year are like choosing to make building things and making things for the joy of it the primary thing they're doing outside of class. And there should be a whole ecosystem that supports that. There should be stuff at the school, which I don't think is Hack Club's part. There should be like awesome hackathons. There should be clubs. There should be a vibrant online community. There should be tons of events, but there should be a whole ecosystem where like a very large number of young people can make being a hacker that like primary identity that they pursue grades 9 through 12. And I think that if that world exists, particularly if it exists with the right values, like, I think that in some ways, like, all of us today, like the current generation of humanity, everyone alive at all ages, like, we are going to face some of the biggest challenges that humanity has ever had to reckon with over the next 50 years. I know, like, we're staring at climate change like down the barrel right now. I don't know how much any of you have read about like AI safety and stuff, but like the stuff that's happening in ChatGPT is like hands down, like, I never expected computers to be able to do anything that looked like thinking in my lifetime. And like, that's going to be incredibly important and incredibly transformative. And like all technology, an incredible tool for good or an incredible tool for evil. And basically, I think we need a generation of hackers to lead the world in taking on and solving some of these problems. And hopefully hackers that are kind, curious, thoughtful, nice, good people, instead of competitive, mean, put each other down and very compensation oriented. So that's the world I hope to live in. And I really hope Hack Club as a community can like meaningfully be a part of that.
Thank you so much, Zach. I think what you said about the whole Hack Club training people to be more thoughtful of, it makes so much sense to me and it really resonates with me. So up next, Nisarga. I'm sorry, I don't think I said your name right, but
Yeah, all right. So, Zach, my name is Nisharga. I'm a Hack Club leader from India. I currently live in New Delhi and I am at my last year of high school. So, I have two questions to ask you. The first is, what are the main obstacles do you have to face in fulfilling your mission associated with Hack Club? And how do you plan to overcome those obstacles? And my second question is, in your opinion, what impact does open source software has in today's world?
Sure. So the first question is like, what are the obstacles that Hack Club is going to face as we try and solve that and become that vision that we just talked about? I don't know. It's going to be really hard and I don't know how to do it. And I think it's going to take a lot of people working really hard, thinking really thoughtfully and like putting in their best to like make Hack Club everything it can and should be. I think the most important thing for us to figure out is that the most powerful, meaningful, important part of Hack Club is a community. I started the organization as a teenager myself, and it meant that all of you know what it's like to be a high school hacker better than like literally anybody else in the entire world. And I think when Hack Club was small, it was very easy to make everything at Hack Club driven by teenagers for teenagers. And I think as we grow and do more, there are certain things that it's like not really possible for teenagers to do. Like a good example of that is like teenagers can't raise money because if you want to raise lots of donations and like be able to fund something, you have to build relationships with people over years. And by the time you built a meaningful relationship with someone, you're graduating high school and moving on to the next thing. So I think the most important thing for Hack Club as a community to figure out is how to keep Hack Club authentically student-led, built by teenagers for teenagers in a space where every teenager sees a like themselves shaped hole in the org that they can fit in and like build. Like every single one of you, I'm sure you see opportunities for Hack. Like I'm sure there's some areas where you see Hack Club being great, and I'm sure there's a lot of areas where Hack Club can be a whole lot better. And like it's so important that Hack Club is a space where you can act, where you're like, yeah, like I want to be the one that can make that change. I'm going to submit that pull request that's going to make Hack Club just a little bit better and solve that problem. And I think how do we do that, particularly in a way where it's authentic and where it stays community driven, is really hard. There isn't a lot of precedent for it. Most of the other organizations that do this are either like very dictatorial. Like if you look at the Linux project, it's like, there's a super hardcore flow for how to submit PRs. There's a very, very, very clear leadership on a small team. And if you don't follow those rules, you're like out of the game and like, you're treated in kind of mean ways. And then there's other projects like the GNOME project or the KDE project or like Firefox, where it's much more committee driven. And in some ways it's more welcoming, but in some ways, like if you have to read 1,000 proposals and like keep up to date on like 1,000 wikis to understand what's going on, that can be hard to contribute to in its own right. So there isn't a lot of precedent on like how to build a meaningful community-driven organization today. And I hope Hack Club can figure that out. And if everyone here, like, hopefully you can see a U-shaped hole to actually go off and help solve these problems. So that's the thing that I think is the thing that's top of mind for me. On the second question of like, what do I see being the power of like the impact of open source? I would not be a coder today if it wasn't for open source. Like literally the only reason I was able to learn how to code was because I was able to go on github.com and read code from people I admired and be like, wait a second, all of the software that I use every day that like literally everything around us relies on was built by people. And like, you can see like what the code they write, you can see where they make mistakes, you can see how they correct those mistakes. And suddenly, for me, what felt like this like incredibly insurmountable goal of like, how do you build a real app felt possible when you see the way other people do it. And I think that something that is really important for us as a broader software community, not just Hack Club, to figure out is I think a lot of Silicon Valley and the broader software community kind of just take open source for given. They're like, yeah, like obviously everything's open source. Of course things are open source because that's the way it is today and that's the way it's always been. But the reality is that the only reason why so much of the software we depend on today is open source is because a small group of individuals 20 to 40 years ago had like a visionary idea that instead of copywriting things and like holding them within the locks and confines of companies and licensing to other people, let's just give it away for free. And that was a radical vision that was very controversial that a few people pushed forward. And now that we have some like massive changes coming to computers, particularly with AI, because like the way you develop machine learning models is very different than the way you develop traditional software, particularly since the file sizes are so much larger and don't really work well with Git. Like right now, there's an open question of, is AI going to be open source or not? And I think it's really important that the broader software community says, yes, it's going to be open source and we're going to push hard to make it. So, and that's not a given. Like that's not what the default path is going to be. So I'll stop there.
All right, thanks for answering my question.
Hey, Zach, that resonates with me on a spiritual level somehow. Okay, so now on to Doro. I hope I'm pronouncing that name right.
It's a joke, but all right. Hey, Zach Latta. I have two questions for the Hack Club. Actually, one is too smally, and the other one is kind of like a dumb question. But let me start. Let me ask the first question. Is the Hack Club actual? Can Hack Club? Oh wait, sorry. Can Hack Club work with other teenagers that all right. Sorry.
Oh, you're
Sorry.
great.
All right. So Hack Club made Sprig and other game consoles, right? Like some assemble required. What about making a hackathon like that is meant to for hardware projects like Winter of Making or Summer of Making? So we can unite all of teenagers around the world, and we could make a hardware hackathon there.
I would love for Hackler to have a hardware hackathon. And honestly, the biggest challenge is that getting people together in one room. Like if we host, in my view, the best experiences that exist in person are going to be different than the best experiences that exist online. And I think that like what a really great online hackathon looks like is probably going to be very different than what a really great in-person hackathon looks like, and vice versa. I would love to have an in-person high school hackathon, but I think one of the challenges around that is like the hardware community in Hack Club is so incredibly global. Like when you look at the Winter of Making, Belle, do you remember how many countries that like participated?
32, I think.
Yeah, like people from 32 countries got involved in this. And if we were to do an in-person event, we unfortunately do not have the financial resources to get people from 32 countries all together in one room. But like, are there going to be more things like the Winter of Making? I would totally love for that to exist. And I would love to have in-person high school events. But I think the more important thing, Doric, is like, you should start this event. Because like the thing that makes Hack Club is like, it's a space where a bunch of teenagers all over the world are building the events, the clubs, the projects that they themselves want to exist in the world. And I know you're in 7th grade, but like, honestly, you can do this. Like you should put together an in-person hackathon around hardware. You should get the hardware grant, which is more than enough to get food for your event. And that's available right now that you can get $500. And like, you should be the one to make that event happen. And if you do it and it's awesome, and like you see other people around the community inspired running their own events too, like totally we can elevate that into being something larger. But you should be the one to make that happen, not us.
Let me get on the second question. What about Hack Club making their own OS for their headquarters? Like like something on Spring but Spade, but it is more. It is like for computers that HQ run for the microcontroller or some low spec PCs actually. So they can so they can make a hard custom hardware style PC like a private Linux distro.
That would be awesome. I don't know how many of you have tried NixOS before, but I am a very big fan of NixOS and I run it on my machine at home. And like every time I see people in Hack Club like ricing out Linux distros and stuff like that, I'm like, you are my hero. And also, I just gonna put it out there. I was an Arch Linux user in 7th grade, so you know, I kind of, you know, I used Arch, so I'm throwing that out there too. But I think that the idea of Hack Club either having a Linux distro or having like a real operating system written from scratch would be pretty amazing. I would say though, like again, like this should be the sort of thing that you build and that like should be community driven. Because the thing is like if HQ is like, okay, we're gonna build like a cool operating system from scratch, it's not gonna have the heart and soul that it would if people from the community did it. And the thing too that like we always need to ask as HQ is like, in my view, the way Hack Club should work is that everything that can possibly be done and led by teenagers should 100% be led and done by teenagers. And HQ's role should be to like do the few things that it's really hard for teenagers to do because of the facts and realities of being a teen. And a lot of those things are like around like programs, structure, reliability, funding, bringing people together in one space and like having certain unifying points throughout the year. So I would be very supportive of that kind of project. And I would say like you should be the one to build it and to lead it. And one thing I will mention though is the new project, which I don't know how many of you have seen here, but the successor to Sprig is a new project called Modular Things. I'll drop a link in the chat, but if you go to, we're doing this in collaboration with the lab at MIT. That's the link. That's a channel on Slack that I just linked to. But for that, we are developing a new Arduino-like hardware platform that is modular, that is written in JavaScript, that is much more tinkerable, we think, than the existing hardware platforms that do exist. And as part of that, we've written our own operating system for these like individual modular things and designed our own PCBs from scratch in collaboration with this lab. They've led a lot of the hardware side and OS side. To build that from scratch, and you can get involved as a contributor. Like we're actively looking for more people to help build it. So join that channel if you're interested, and that's like a call out to like everyone here who's interested in hardware or operating systems.
Because I asked that question, it was Max Speed made how many people?
Oh, you got muted.
How many people were there in the headquarters? Because at his message he made a modified version of your Wi-Fi. Oops,
Awesome.
Wi-Fi.
Did people disappear?
Nothing happened. Okay.
I can't hear anything right now.
Could you hear Doruk? Like, were you asking a question? I kind of.
Yeah, I could hear Doruk, but I can't hear Zach speaking.
Oh, Dork, sorry. Did you ask another question? I couldn't quite hear you. Your audio cut out for me.
I did. I said. I didn't.
Doruk, do you mind putting it like in the chat, like just to ensure fairness with the number of questions?
Just I said MSW hacked the headquarters Wi-Fi and made how many people are there in headquarters counter. That's our big thing.
Could you put the question in the chat? Sorry, the connection's a little rough for me.
Okay, thank you so much, Zach. And Doruk, if you do decide to start your own event or even your own project, you can always reach out to Zach on Slack DMs. He's very responsive that way. So next up, we have Luanda.
Um, I joined the hack club some months ago, and I would like to ask, how do you manage all the things, like all this big community that we have here? I know
Yeah.
you like have.
Yeah,
Okay.
go for it.
I think
Luanda,
the
can you go-
question was,
Oh, you can talk. That's my own question.
So the question was like, how does Hack Club HQ structure itself to try and support all the different things happening in the community and across the country and the world? We are trying to figure that out right now. And it turns out it's a really hard question, because if you have too much management, then it's not clear for people, like people feel like they can't contribute. And if you have not enough management, then things get way too chaotic, nothing gets finished, and it's really frustrating because you don't know where to get involved and like stuff is breaking all the time. So I see a couple of staff members who are in the chat in the call right now who know exactly what I'm talking about. Because, and I'm sure many of you in the community who've like worked with staff have ran into this too, and have also like had your own thoughts and experiences. I think that like basically the way that HQ structures itself right now is that we have a few different teams. So it's a team-oriented structure. So there's like the clubs team, and then there's the bank team, and then there's the community team, and then there's like, we actually don't have any staff on this right now, but there's like the hackathon team, which is really just ran by bank. And then there's like the projects team. And I think the thing that like we are most trying to figure out right now is, well, for each of these teams, what we've noticed is that everything in Hack Club, even though we're a technical community, has a very heavy human to human component. And I think an important value that Hack Club has is that we never want to automate the human away from the equation. Like there should never be a version of clubs where you're not interacting with a human from HQ. It's very important that there's like one-on-one interaction with everybody. So each of these teams has like an operations component. That's like the human component, where there's some people who are responsible for interfacing one-on-one with people and making sure that that communication is very reliable. And then there's an engineering and product component where we're actively developing new content, trying to make things better. And both of those sides too should have multiple Hack Club team members on each. So like when you look at the clubs part of Hack Club, like Holly is a person that runs operations for clubs, but Holly works very closely with a number of people in the community, both on the operations side and on the engineering and product side. Similarly with bank, I think Hack Club Bank right now has more team members who are Hack Clubbers than team members who are full-time staff members. And I think my vision for the org is like every team should have more Hack Clubbers on it than full-time staff members. The interesting thing, and the thing that I've been thinking a lot about recently, is like, what's the right structure for us with the community? And this is where like I'd be very curious for your own thoughts and like everyone in here's thoughts. The way I think about it is that if you put two hackers in a room together and you're like, become friends with each other, it is super awkward. And you don't really know what to talk about or what to do or like how to interface with each other. And also, like, if you ask me, that's not really how friendships are made. Like friendships aren't made by like two people with similar interests being in the same room. Friendships are made when two people do something together. There's like a medium through which they're interfacing with each other, because that suddenly makes all your interactions relevant. It makes them long-term because you're working towards a common goal. And it makes it something where even if you might have some differences on the surface, like maybe you're from different parts of the world, or like maybe like one person's a beginner and one person's an expert, you have that shared common ground of the thing that you're working on that binds you together and makes you have a common goal. And we're calling that team the projects team. And the way that we're thinking about the community more and more is that the community at any given time should have 2 to 3 really exciting, really interesting initiatives that are diverse in their content. So like the Winter Harbor Wonderland is like one example of like an initiative. where hundreds of people were applying, getting grants for their hardware projects, posting in the hardware party channel, working on their projects together, inspiring each other. And that is like an event type project. And then another project is like SignWriter, which is happening right now, where a bunch of Hack Clubbers are working with some staff members to build a really cool math game. And for anyone who's not familiar, you should join the game dev channel. So SignWriter is shipping in 2 weeks. And if you've ever seen the YouTuber 3 Blue 1 Brown, well, they're one of the partners who's helping launch it and helping get it out to the broader world. It's a really cool project, and we're actually in need of contributors right now. So please consider getting involved. And like, that's a highly technical, really interesting mathy thing. And then there's like the drawing machine. So at any given point, there's a few different projects going on. And I think that what we're trying to figure out right now is what's the right team structure for that. And what we're roughly seeing, and I won't go super on about this because I know we have a lot of questions, is like there's a strong production component to that, where we have to have product leadership. We have to have lots of project management to make sure that like issues get triaged and there's really approachable issues on GitHub that people feel like they can actually do as a first step. A good example of this is if you go to the SignWriter repo, which I'll link in the chat. We recently went through all the issues and tried to make them very approachable and did a call out in the community, and like 9 new people submitted pull requests that they'd never submitted before to the project, which was pretty amazing. And then the second side of this is like there's like a live operations component to these projects, where if you look at Sprig is something where, partially it has to be developed as like a product and as a thing that people can use open source. But part of it is that since you submit your games through a pull request, there has to be a team of people who are reviewing the pull request and making sure that they always get prompt reviews, and making sure that's done reliably in a friendly, exciting way is what we're starting to call live operations. We're pretty early in some of the thinking around this, but that's roughly how we're starting to think about it. So like a team-oriented approach with like a projects team with production and engineering capacity for the community-oriented things. But Luander, I mean, I'd be super interested in connecting more on this if you have thoughts and ideas, because right now I think we at HQ feel like the current model is imperfect and has room for improvement, and like we're actively trying to figure out what that looks like and how to make it awesome. Because the vision is like we want Hack Club to be the best place ever, as does everyone in this call.
All right. I would also like to ask how do I don't know how I'm gonna ask it about the projects and the Hack Club itself. We do have some like all the types of divisions in Hack Club, like from all the countries and everything. I'm including myself. I'm from Brazil and I'm helping all the people from Brazil here. Do you think that one day maybe Hack Club is gonna do some kind of event to like get all these people together, like to work on Hack Club, like literally on Hack Club, but all the people from all the countries in some sort of way?
Yes, I would love for that to happen. And I think the vision for events is like, the way I would like to see them play out is like, I would like to see 95% of events organized by the community for the community. Like, I think right now there's roughly, I think 50 hackathons that happen a year. In my opinion, there should be like 400 to 500 that happen a year. And they should not just be in the US, they should be all over the world. And they should not all follow like the traditional hackathon format. Like, I want to see some traditional hackathons. I want to see game jams. I want to see like open source contribution jams. And there should be a whole wide range of things to keep it interesting. And like, my hope is that Hack Club can provide more support around more community events being organized from like a funding perspective, from like a leadership and support perspective, and from like a quality assurance perspective. But then on top of that, like particularly as a contribution community grows, I think that like we should definitely figure out ways to get the people who are actively contributing together in person more. One small thing, and the problem is like Hack Club as a nonprofit, like from a business perspective, we're actually very, very, very small. Like the budget of Hack Club total, even though there's like 25,000 people in the broader community, the budget of Hack Club is like smaller than like a typical elementary school, like a primary school in the US. And as a result, like our resources are like very, very limited. And it means that we have to be very careful where we spend money. And even though we sometimes do like big budget, exciting events where we cover travel and stuff for people, because we think it's very important that Hack Club feels like a gift and you don't ever have to pay to be involved in Hack Club, we don't have the resources to do those all the time. But one small thing that we are starting to do, which is a new thing that I'm excited to announce with everyone here today, is we now at Hack Club HQ in Vermont, we have signed a lease on an apartment across the street from HQ, which is available to the community. And we're thinking of this apartment as being owned by the community. So now if, and this is an open invite to everybody in this call, if you ever want to come to Hack Club HQ, you are invited and you have a place to stay. Right now you got to cover the travel, but now there's housing, which makes it a whole lot easier for people to come out here. But given like, go forward a year or two, I would love a world where like, for everybody who's a meaningful, engaged open source contributor to Hack Club, there's like an annual get together, regardless of which country you're from or something like that. But we just don't have the resources to make that happen yet, given flight costs.
All right, I guess that's all my questions. Thank you so much for asking them.
Well, thank you for everything you do to make Hack Club awesome. And the stuff you're doing in Sprig is amazing.
Thank you, Leander, for the question. I'd like request everyone to cap the questions at once, just so we can ensure like more people get to ask their questions. With that, I call up Josias. Again, I'm not sure of the pronunciation. I'm sorry.
So, hey Zach, I'm Josias from Yaoundé, Cameroon, and my question is, if you were to change the way we learn today, what are you going to change specifically? Or what is your vision for the future of the way we learn new things or acquire new skills? So that's my question.
I love that question. And Josias, the work you're doing on SciMatter is amazing. And it was awesome to meet you at Epoch too. I think that's something like, okay, so first on like a very big picture, starting 10 years ago, or I guess like 15 years ago today, everything in education changed. And like, for some reason, most educators still aren't talking about it, which is like suddenly every human being on the planet, including every single person on this call, started having access to like all of human history and knowledge in our pockets. Like this thing is like better than the Library of Alexandria. Like our phones and the internet literally have everything humans collectively know about everything all together all in one place. And when we think about our education system, so much of the different education systems around the world that exist are very focused on solving the distribution problem of how do you simply get access to all of the different pieces of knowledge you need someone to know in front of them, regardless of where they are. And at least here in the US, when you look at our public education system, what you have is a massive distribution system, one to many, where we've gotten very, very, very good at getting that information simply available to everyone with certain quality bars through testing that happen annually to make sure people are actually learning how to read and write and stuff like that. And I think that when you think about the challenge of learning 50 years ago, the primary challenge of learning was actually distribution. How do we simply get the knowledge to people? But when you think about the challenge today, I think the challenge of distribution has been solved. Like everyone who has access to the internet now has access to like everything that we know. And if you don't have access to the internet yet, as long as you have access to electricity, for $100 a month, you can get access to internet through Starlink, which compared to the other options in education is quite affordable. So I think the new problem of learning is no longer one of access, but is now a problem of motivation. How do we get people to care? I mean, if we have access to all of human history and knowledge in our pockets, why doesn't everyone in this call know everything already? And I think it's because we don't yet have spaces that encourage people to become slowly better at things over time in a motivation-oriented way. I think the future of education probably looks a lot like your GitHub contribution graph. Or like, I don't know about all of you, but for me, when I was learning how to code, seeing each discrete piece of progress I made as I was learning, like the best way to learn to code is just to code, right? We all know that. And seeing like those little pieces of progress build over time was extremely motivating. It was like, I know I'm actually learning and I have a tool to hold myself accountable for learning. And I think that's a thing that like, we haven't totally figured out for coding yet. I mean, I still think some of those like tools can be better, but imagine if there was like a GitHub contribution graph for like reading and for writing and for history and for math and for geography. And what if it was possible to kind of hold yourself accountable more on your own journey in like a community oriented way? So anyways, I think that like when I think about the future of education, I like realistically, I think probably if we look like 25 years out, the world I want to live in is one where there's public school, pretty similar to the way schools operate today, but probably with no homework and with a shorter school day. And then with all that free time, I think there should be a lot of things like Hack Club that are really good, and Hack Club should be a lot bigger and better and more extensive. And you should kind of spend, 1/3 of your day at school just getting the basics down, because it is truly important that everybody learns how to read and write. And the internet isn't going to change that, in my opinion. But then everything else is done in like a motivation oriented way where you're building a portfolio rather than passing tests, whether you're building a portfolio around math or English or coding or something else entirely. And I think that's realistic and something we can actually have. And I think that's what the best schools are going to end up looking like. And already like a number of universities are starting to look like this without totally realizing it.
Thank you for the answer.
Yeah, well, thank you for everything you do to make Hack Club awesome.
Thank you so much, Zach. That was awesome. Okay, up next, Kumarasamy. Are you there?
Yeah,
Hello.
I'm there. Hi, Zach.
Would love to see you if you could turn your camera on.
I'm sorry, I'm not able to turn on the camera.
Okay, that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah. So my name is Kumaraswamy, and I am from Bengaluru, India. So I'm at the last year of the school, and I started programming at the age of 12. And for most of the time, I just prioritize programming more than the schoolwork because it's just a lot interesting. So my question is, what's your advice for individuals who have a lot of potential, and how do you see them to overcome problems?
Well, could you say that one more time? So what's my advice for what?
My question is, what's your advice for individuals who have a lot of potential, and how do you see them to overcome the problems?
Oh, I just think you should pick your thing and spend a lot of time doing it, basically. Like if your thing is coding, you should just spend a lot of time writing code and shipping projects. If your thing is writing, spend a lot of time writing whatever type of writing you're interested in and ship it. If your thing is like, you want to be an entrepreneur and start businesses, start a lot of businesses and actually force yourself to make money and like just do a lot of it and spend as many hours as you can doing it. Have any of you heard the story of the Polgar family? Okay, so the Polgar family is fascinating. And specifically, there's this guy named Laszlo Polgar, I think in the 70s, who was an educational psychologist. And he lived in Budapest, which was under the Iron Curtain in Soviet Union at the time. And he had what was at the time kind of this radical idea, which is, I think if you ask the average person back then, what makes someone a genius? Like what made Mozart Mozart? Most people would reply, they were just born that way. Sometimes you're born with a gift and you're born just amazing. And then you become like a prodigy in whatever your field is. And Laszlo Polgar had this radical idea that getting really good at something was something that you aren't born with, but a thing that is built through practice. And he came up with this theory where he said, if you want to become great at anything, all you have to do is 3 things. The first is that you have to figure out how to make that activity fun so you can do it for 8 to 12 hours a day without burning out. The second thing is you have to figure out how to do that activity in a way where you have feedback loops. So you know if you're getting better or worse at that activity. And then third, you need to figure out how to do that thing in a way where you're always pushing yourself just ever so slightly outside of your comfort zone. Not so far where it's demotivating when you fail, but not so close that the wins aren't meaningful and that you're not progressing. And he and his wife decided to run the ultimate experiment. which is they said, let's apply this philosophy and this idea we have to our own children. Like, let's have 3 kids and actually like try and like have them do this. And like, it's kind of weird actually when you read the post, and he wrote this book about it called, I think Genius is the name of the book. But it's kind of weird, but like they said, okay, we want our kids to become great at chess. So what they did was they have 3 daughters, and they for each of them, as they grew up, they did everything they could to try and get them to do those 3 things. And I mean, the stuff they did was like extensive. Like, as soon as they were able to, they started playing lots of chess games with them constantly. For any of you who've played chess, you might have seen like chess move books where there's like sequences you do in chess where it's like, okay, like do these 5 moves in order. That's an opening sequence. Or like, this is a good sequence at this stage of the game. They built in their library in Budapest the 2nd largest library of chess moves in the world, in their apartment. They had like 80,000 postcards on their walls with different chess moves that they did by hand. And the only larger one in the world was like the National Soviet Library of chess moves. I mean, it's crazy. And what happened was their first daughter became the first woman ever to win a men's championship. And she was 6 at the time. I think she was 6. She might have been a slightly different age, but she was like a child. And she went on to become, I believe today, she is the 8th highest ranked female chess player in the world. Their second daughter similarly went on to like do amazing in chess. And then their third daughter today is the best female chess player in the world. Her name is Judith Polgar. She has the highest Elo score out of any woman alive. You can look her up. Like, she's like actively playing still. And like, this idea that like you can become great at anything through good practice, and all good practice takes is making it fun, doing it a lot, having good feedback loops, and always pushing yourself outside your comfort zone. Like, this really works. And it works whether you want to learn chess, whether you want to learn coding, or you want to learn another subject. But I would figure out how to do that for whatever your thing is, and just be relentless. And really, the most important thing with all of this is how to make it fun. Because if you try and spend a lot of time on something through discipline, you're going to burn out. And the thing is you'll think you're being disciplined by doing it for like 2 hours a day or 3 hours a day or whatever it is. But the person next to you who figured out how to make it fun, and they're like, literally coding is more fun than Netflix or anything else you could possibly do right now, they're going to do it for 8 hours a day, and they're going to go way further than you can. So it's really important to figure out how to make it fun. So that would be my suggestion.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, you bet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thanks for the question. Now is Reese, our very own Reese.
Hello, Zach. I'm wondering, what's HQ's position towards the current state of confessions, and how does HQ plan to either stay out of it or evolve it? Like, what is HQ going to do with like confessions going into the future?
Totally. So I wouldn't say that HQ as a whole has a position on confessions yet, but individual members at HQ have different positions on confessions that inform our revealed, position on confessions. What I can't talk about is my view on confessions. And first, I just want to address what's been happening over the past couple of days. I think the few situations where there have been people who've been individually targeted, either publicly or anonymously, is absolutely unacceptable. That is clearly against the code of conduct. And like, we are actively on it. And if you do this, you are going to get suspended from Hack Club. Like, it is not okay to individually target people. That is bullying. And bullying is like, has absolutely no role in Hack Club in any way, shape, or form, no matter what. And this is like an active conversation. We're figuring out what our next steps are. And Reese, I just want to personally say to you, like, I think some of the stuff that's been said that's targeted you is completely unacceptable and has no place in Hack Club. And I'm really sorry that that has happened, and that shouldn't have been able to happen in the first place. When I think about confessions more broadly, I think it's tough. And I think it's like the thing that's interesting about Hack Club, and this is both where the magic happens, and this is also where things can get kind of confusing at times, is the heavily driven nature of Hack Club, heavily community driven nature of Hack Club. And what I mean by that is there's all these spaces that range from like open source projects to like some channels on Slack to places like Confessions, where it's not really owned by HQ, but it is clearly Hack Club associated, and there clearly is Hack Club endorsement of it happening. And there's this open question of like, how do you simultaneously have a grassroots community while having a consistent brand and certain quality measures that people have come to expect from you? And in some ways, there's basic tools for this, like the code of conduct and stuff like this, but really the details are in the nuances. And there isn't a lot of precedent for that. Like if Hack Club was like a for-profit company, like Confessions would not have been created or in the first place, or would have been shut down immediately after it was created. But at the same time, like the awesome community open source projects that happen in the Hack Club GitHub wouldn't be happening either. And the clubs and the community hackathons around the country also wouldn't be happening. So I think the question is really, how do you have the good without the bad? I think my position on Confessions is that we need to have first a much clearer code of conduct for what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable broadly in Hack Club, and much clearer reporting mechanisms and very clear examples of like positive behavior. I think a lot of code of conducts try and say what you should not do, but I think what good code of conducts do is they include that, but more importantly, they include what you should do and what positive behavior looks like. And I think that the Recurse Center actually does a really great job at this. I don't know if any of you have seen the Recurse Center social rules. I really like that document by them. I think it's awesome. And I think we should have something that looks a little bit more like that. The second thing is I think we need a stricter CRT. And I think we need to make it easier for CRT to do their job. I have never been a part of CRT. But I've been involved in a number of conversations with CRT members over the years as Confessions has gone through extremely high drama points, extremely low drama points, and everything in between. And the job of CRT is very difficult because oftentimes the thing that you actually care about with a confession is whether or not the post was submitted in good faith. And if the post was submitted in good faith, then you almost always you want to approve it. But if a post is submitted in bad faith, and almost never you want to approve it, and it's very challenging to tell sometimes because it's anonymous and you can't think about the person's reputation who's submitting it because you literally don't have access to that information. Similarly, since CRT is something that happens behind closed doors, anytime anything questionable, even in the slightest, happens, like people assume that like CRT is some evil cabal of people who are trying to do like the most evil, wicked possible thing ever. And it's very like, and that's just not true. Like CRT is a group of people that want Hack Club to be amazing and sometimes make small mistakes and sometimes do a really great job in positions where it's hard to do a great job. And I think we need to have more empathy to them. And I think we need to have better tools to help them do a better job, mostly through I think, very clear rules. Like, I think that one rule that should just be extremely clear in Confessions that like, doesn't matter at all, no targeting at all. That would solve, I think, 80% of the issues. I think finally, I think there's this question of like whether or not like Confessions has a role in a place like Hack Club. And I think it does. And the reason why I think it does is because Hack Club is a community of teenage coders. And half of that is like being a hacker and coder, and half of that is being a teenager. And I think the mix of the two is what makes Hack Club magical when it works. And I think that Confessions can create a very needed positive space for people to talk about the teenage side of things that sometimes you don't really want associated with your name. And I understand that. When I was a teenager, I really wanted spaces like that. And in particular, like I struggled a lot with mental health when I was a teenager, and like having a place to get support around some of that stuff, I would have killed for that. And I felt very, very alone. And like, I didn't have that support mechanism when I was 15. So I think that's kind of my take. What's your take?
I don't know. I think it's a valuable space for a lot of the reasons that you suggested. I was just interested in how HQ plans to HQ is basically let Confessions grow into this thing, and now that it is this thing, I was wondering like more what HQ is going to do with it. And I think you laid it out as just keeping it a community project where
like
HQ kind of stays out, but also monitors it pretty heavily.
Yeah, and I think it's like we got to figure out how to walk that line in an authentic way. Because I think also with these things, like if HQ try to take ownership of everything good that happened in the community, there's no incentive for people to do good things in the community, because then they don't have to, then they don't get to have ownership over that success. Like, I think it's important that like HQ isn't the most prestigious body in Hack Club, and that the community is actually more important than HQ is. Like, it should be like the dynamic is like HQ exists to serve the community, not vice versa. And I think that building the right dynamic there is very challenging, especially since HQ does need to have authority to carry out its job effectively.
HQ definitely, I don't like, HQ definitely has a level of like status, I guess you would say.
Yeah, and I think part of that's inevitable, but also like you can like we can choose to make that really important or not so important. And I think it's important that we HQ should not be some special club. Like, I think that it should be just as prestigious to be heavily involved in the community and ship awesome projects and like have nothing to do with HQ, but like be a part of Hack Club as a space. Then like that should be just as prestigious, if not more prestigious, than like have a role at HQ. Because it should be about what you do and what you bring to the community, not like what title you have. And I think that like the last thing I'll say on that is like, Hack Club, a lot of the people in Hack Club are ambitious. When I was a teenager, I was very ambitious. Like, I wanted to be the best at whatever I did. And I really wanted to like be aggressive about being the best at whatever I was trying to do. And I think that competitiveness from ambitious teenagers can be very positive or very toxic. And I think, unfortunately, in a lot of high school spaces, that competitiveness turns into something very toxic. And I think the college application process is very, very, very toxic and creates a lot of very toxic behavior from people, where they exaggerate roles or like make up stuff, or like, you know, can be really mean to people, or like it creates all like it suddenly makes this thing.
I see that all the time. It's terrible.
Yeah, like it suddenly makes this thing that really doesn't have to be a zero-sum game, like a zero-sum game. And I think that I think that if one thing I hope Hack Club can do is to create a space for ambitious teenagers that's like a different path, where you don't have to be a toxic sociopath to be ambitious and succeed. And I think that that's really important for the world that path exists. Yeah.
That's interesting. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. So next up is Peter. Are you there?
All right. Hey, Zach. So I have a question that might is not related to like programming at all. I've heard that you make salads, right?
Sometimes.
Yeah, so I just want to know if you have advice for making the best salad.
Yes, I do.
This is a typical.
So the secret to making good salad is stop using that romaine lettuce. Romaine lettuce sucks. It's terrible. It doesn't taste good. There's no flavor to it. Get like spinach or something like that instead. Something that actually tastes good and actually has good texture. Okay. Secondly, I think when most people think salads, they think like it must be healthy. No, make a salad that tastes good. The most important thing when you cook at home is to make something that tastes good, not something that you think you should eat. Because the thing is once you know how to make something that tastes good, then you can figure out how to like make it healthy or whatever it is. But first, figure out how to make it taste good. For me, what makes a great salad? It's really good lettuce of some way, shape, or form. I really like baby spinach. Second, you got to have cheese in there. I like crumbled goat cheese. I think it's awesome. That's where it's at. Tastes great. It's affordable. It's awesome. Third, I really want some texture. Like for me, when I have food, the texture of the food is very important. Like it's almost like as important as the flavor. So like I really like to put like candied pecans or like dried cranberries or stuff like that in there. Tastes awesome. It's delicious. It's great. And then finally, how do you make a good vinaigrette? For me, I thought I didn't like salad dressing, but then what I realized was that all salad dressing in a bottle tastes terrible. And if you make your own salad dressing from scratch, it's pretty easy to make it taste good. All you do is put a little bit of vinegar with like lemon juice and like whatever other stuff you put in it. Normally, I'll just do like some olive oil, some lemon juice, like a very tiny bit of vinegar, because I don't really like vinegar that much, but sometimes you want a little bit of that acidity. Shake it all up, put as much or as little as you want, and then boom, you have a salad that actually tastes good.
Nice. We should put like someone should make like a
Okay,
big
I
actual.
think I have to do this. Okay. What's the perfect recipe for a latte?
So, well,
I
it's
have
espresso milk basically, but you got to use whole milk. You can't use anything but whole milk. And I've learned a lot about how to make espresso recently. I'm not very good at it, but I have a friend who has gotten like very serious about it. And basically, the takeaway I had was you do need to get like the difference between fancy beans and not fancy beans with espresso is actually enormous. But the thing is, you don't want beans that were roasted yesterday. Like you want beans that were roasted like a month ago or like 3 weeks ago. If they're roasted 6 months ago, it tastes bad. But if they're just roasted yesterday, it tastes super sour. And for me, whenever I would have like the fancy espresso, it always tasted super sour. And I was like, why is that? It's because you got to wait like 3 weeks until after it's done. And then you just get whole milk and you steam it and stuff. But yeah.
so this is gonna be our last community question from Zion.
Zach, I just had a question for you. I got some Hack Club stickers in my first kickoff box, and I was super excited to see two of my favorite organizations coming together. I was wanting to see what you see this relationship going into in the future, and what's your opinion on something that I'm very interested in? How do you see the hackathon formula kind of being applied to first? Like, do you think it's feasible to see robotics in like the 3-day crunch time formula that hackathons try to foster?
Oh my God, I'm so happy that you had that experience with the first kit. We literally at HQ, like, we've been introduced to first, and I did first for 1 semester when I was in high school, and it was like the only engineering coding related thing at all that was near me. And it was so fun. Like in August, we had to hand pack at HQ 4,000 envelopes with HQ stickers. And I don't know if you saw it. Did you see did you do the puzzle? Did you do the ARG?
Oh, I didn't see that one. No,
Oh,
I
so
just saw the
every
stickers
first
on the
kit of
table, and
parts,
I was like, "What stickers?"
yeah, every kit of parts also had an ARG in it. So there was a hint that started a massive collaborative puzzle that over 1,000 people ended up playing. That was like quite sophisticated, and it's pretty funny because there's a number of Reddit posts in the first subreddit where some people are like so incredibly wrong about what the solution actually is. Like they're like there's a secret in the way that the stamp worked. There's no secret in the way the stamp worked. But like in the photo that they posted, like right next to the stamp, there is a secret that they weren't talking about. Anyways, yeah, I mean, I think the big vision here is like when I started Hack Club and when I first got connected with First, I was worried that there'd be very like competitive dynamics because I'm like, oh, like we're trying to serve the same people and like we are like competitors in a way, but really like I think that couldn't be farther from the truth. And as we've gotten to know the org, like I think that is really just wrong as a take. I think that if we want to live in a world where a substantial number of young people have like a hacker path that they can take, where they make like the primary thing they do outside of class, coding and making things and building things for the joy of it, like you need Hack Club, you need First, you need 1,000 other things. They all need to be together. They all need to work together. And it has to be a whole ecosystem that you're a part of. And for First specifically, the way we're working with them, the way we're talking about it is kind of like Hack Club is First's coding partner. First wants to do a lot more coding related stuff inside of First. Some of this is like having more workshops for robotics teams. Some of this is like, I can't share too much, but like some of the actual engineering stuff is going to have some changes in the future, likely, particularly in like the middle level. Like, and I think that, you know, First is an amazing group of mechanical engineers who like really love engineering and building things, and they really understand and are into the hacker ethos. And we are kind of working together in a way to make Hack Club resources available to every First team and vice versa. And hopefully like make like every First team know about the hackathons that are happening near them and like support First teams in starting their own hackathons and stuff like that. On top of that, a lot of First teams have been using Hack Club Bank too. There are about 50 First teams now that have gotten started on Hack Club Bank in some way, shape, or form. And I can't announce anything yet, but it sounds like there might be a little bit more like collaboration there next year. But I think programmatically then like that's kind of the big picture. But like I'm really excited with the two organizations working together to like really make this coding and hacker and maker path something where there's just a lot of resources and a lot of different directions available for people. In terms of the hackathon format, I really hope that the hackathon format evolves and can evolve. I don't think we have all the answers, but I think that like a lot of people, when they think about a traditional hackathon, they picture like you show up to kind of an uninspiring venue with like 50 to 100 people. There's a lot of sponsors there that are trying to sell you stuff. And then you build a project that is kind of like, for lack of a better word, quite BS-y, that is then judged by adults who have no idea what they're looking at or aren't technical. And it's like, that doesn't sound good for anybody. And I think hackathons, first and foremost, should be places to celebrate and legitimize the joy of making. They should first and foremost be about fun and like pushing yourself as a coder and as a maker, wherever you happen to be in your journey, whether you're like writing your first lines of code or whether you're writing operating systems left and right, and you're gonna like build a Game Boy game from scratch in assembly or something like that. And I think as part of that, like the way I hope the model evolves is like, one, I think judging at every hackathon should not be done by adults, but it should be a peer judging process where peers are voting on each other's projects. We have done that. We did that at Assemble and at Epoch. I don't think we've totally nailed it yet at HQ events. Like I think we can still make it better, but like I want to see every hackathon do peer judging. The second thing is I would like to see more theme specific and oriented hackathons. Like I think the prompt of like go out and build anything is a little like it. We had this really interesting conversation. It was an AMA with Elan Lee like a year and a half ago. And he was one of the designers of the Xbox. And he also was one of the designers behind Halo. And he also created Exploding Kittens, if you've ever seen that game. And one thing he talked about, he also invented ARGs. He's like the inventor of the ARG format. And he had this really interesting idea, he said, where he said, if you want to make something great, sometimes you feel like you should have blue sky thinking. Oh, you can do anything. But actually, creativity doesn't come from a lack of constraints. Creativity comes from constraints. When you say you must do something that adheres to these criteria, suddenly you have something you can latch onto and be creative around. And I think that hackathons should have more themes to inspire people to be creative. And when I say themes, I don't think themes like social impact are very meaningful because it's very generic. It's like, what does that even mean? And also like having a real impact in the world is hard. Like the problem of homelessness isn't solved because someone hasn't built the homelessness app yet. It's like, no, like there's like 1,000 things that contribute to that. And like, you need to work for like a lifetime to solve that. Like it's super complicated, but a constraint of like build a game with a theme in 24 hours, that is something very specific, very discrete you can do. Or a theme of like, let's do a Zig hackathon and you must code your project in Zig. Like that's something you can latch onto, stuff like that. And I love the idea of like a robotic specific thing or something along those lines. The last thing I'll say on the hackathon format is I think that we need hackathons. This is like a current conversation that's happening at HQ where we're trying to think through. We're probably going to do some sort of spring event. And we're trying to think through what the format for that should be. And one thing that we've been talking about is that hackathons are a big commitment. Like it's like a lot to like go to a thing for 24 hours. And like also it's kind of risky because like if you find a group that you have a lot of fun with, like you want to be there the full 24 hours. But if you show up and you don't really find a group, you're kind of like alone for 24 hours and it can be kind of intimidating and scary in a way. And also like if you have some commitments on Sunday, like it's just a lot to commit to a full 24 hours. And one thought we had is what if hackathons had 2 tracks? Like what if the typical hackathon had like the jam track and then the competition track? And the jam track was like 8 hours to 12 hours long. You show up, you probably come to workshops, and the expectation is that you show up and you demo at the end of the day, whatever you did, whether you came to some workshops or whether you just like worked, like made some progress on your own project. You don't have to start from scratch. You can work on something you've already been working on. And it could be the sort of thing where like, if there's a hackathon happening near me, yeah, I'm just going to go for the afternoon on Saturday and work on some stuff I've already been working on. It's like a reason to like be social around coding. And then the competition track is like serious. It's like you have to start from scratch. There's a team limit size. You have to adhere to theme. And by the end of it, like there's actually like real peer judging and maybe some sort of real prize or something like that. Because that way it could potentially make it a lot more easy for casual people to stop by and just see if it's something they're interested in. I also have just noticed for myself personally, going to a hackathon is a really big commitment. And I kind of feel like if I only go for one day, I'm kind of like wimping out from the whole experience. And like, I'm kind of like off the main track, where I think it'd be really great if there was like a track that's like, you know, a lot easier for people to come to. So Zane, does that answer your question? I know I just kind of went on for a while there.
Oh, it really does. And it's cool seeing like you and someone like Dean Kamen come together, especially because like he has a lot of the same ideals that you do. But then kind of riffing off of that one thing, I was contemplating making a Sprig hackathon as well, because I'm really interested in like fostering that community at my school. And I just saw Sprig as something very accessible for people to like come in and kind of learn and kind of like riff off of pretty easily, especially because I just like I'm new to hosting stuff too, so I want something easy on my end that I know I can confidently teach and not like have to jump around different languages and do different things and stuff. So yeah, it's been really, really insightful. That definitely the dual track idea makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, I think that's awesome.
Well, one thing on that, like one, you should totally host that event. And also like your role as hosting a hackathon doesn't have to be teaching people stuff. Like the first and foremost role of a hackathon organizer is to create a space. And like, if you create a room and get people in that room and then like provide food, like you've already done 90% of your job. Like your job doesn't primarily have to be instructional. And something that like we are trying to figure out how to move Hack Club to more of is to move people out of an instructional role and more into like a facilitator role. Like running a hack club should not be like running a workshop where you're teaching people something each week. It should be first and foremost like creating a space at your school where people code on projects together. The problem is that people do need some structure, particularly if they're starting out. So how do you weigh those two things we're trying to figure out? And similarly for hackathons, like it should be like your job as a hackathon organizer is to create the space and make people aware of it and get people in the room. But like, hopefully you don't have to teach them, because also teaching is really hard and you probably won't do a good job if you're doing it for the first time. Nobody would. So like, why even try that in the first place? So if you facilitate yourself, if you put yourself in more of a facilitator position, that could work really well. And then lastly, Zane, if you if you end up doing some sort of like robotics themed hackathon or something like that, please DM me on Slack. Dean Kamen and I got together at the beginning of our partnership, and we had a one-on-one at his office that was like an hour and a half long. He was really excited about it. And one thing he was asking about is, can there be robotics hackathons? And we were like, it's not our job to organize these events, but if you organize it, I bet that he and First would love to support that in some way, shape, or form. And we could help facilitate that.
That'd be really cool. Yeah, thanks for opening that door. I'll definitely think about it.
Cool.
Okay. With this, we come to one of the most anticipated parts of an AMA, the POG phase. Zach, are you ready? Zach?
Yeah, he's
Yep,
ready.
did you ask me a question?
No, we need the POG phase. It's about time.
Oh, the plug face. Oh, sorry, I can hear you.
Lol.
That was wonderful, Zach. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Now, again, back to Neela.
Yeah, thank you so much for spending all this time with us. I know I learned a lot, and this was much anticipated by the community. So I hope we did it justice. And also, like in our words, we are very self-absorbed teenagers. So do you have any questions for us?
Oh, totally. Yeah. And also like, I'm happy to stay on for a few more minutes after the AMA officially wraps, because I know a few more people are DMing me with questions. I'm happy to stay on for like another 20 minutes or so.
Sorry, just to add to this, I've told people that they can always send more questions in the AMA's channel. Then
yeah,
you can
that's
always
great. That works great for me. I think the biggest question is like, what do all of you want to see from Hack Club? Like, it's really important for me that Hack Club is a space that is magical and like everything that all of you want it to be. And sometimes like I worry a lot that like Hack Club isn't that for everybody. And obviously we're gonna have some areas where like we do a good job, and obviously there's gonna be some like a lot of places where Hack Club can be so much better. But like I'd love to hear from all of you, like how can Hack Club be better? Like what do you want to see from the community and from the organization? And then I'm happy to say after this for any other questions, because I'm seeing some DMs.
Can I say it?
Yeah, just
Okay,
go
go
for it. Yeah.
on.
Anyone, please unmute and just go for it.
For me, her club's already magical. I don't need it to be more. But I would really, really like to have some sort of way to talk with, I don't know how can I say, to kind of like make the community more together. Like all the countries, I mean, they are together, but I don't know how can I ask this. Wait, let me think a bit.
Jack, can I please give you my suggestion for Hack Club or something?
Yeah, please. And the Wander, please go for it.
Yes, so like Hack Club is a magical space. I discovered it in December when Epoch was organized. My friend told me about Epoch, but due to exams, I couldn't go. So as you know, only teenagers can be part of Hack Club as of now. But can you just make roll out a program for college goers or people who are older than 18 in Hack Club? So that would be amazing if they could volunteer as core members or something, or seniors. That would be great, because most of the hack clubbers are going to be older than 18 in a year or so. They are going to graduate high school. If we can stay connected with hack club for the rest of our lives, it will be really awesome and a great experience.
I love that suggestion. Thank you. And anyone else, please feel free to just go for it too. And the Wander, like I totally hear you in wanting more spaces for people to be able to connect with each other. And I'd love to hear more. Feel free to DM me too if you want to talk more about that.
Anybody else? Okay, there. Go on.
Anyways, I will talk the question about hashtag Azarial.
I'm really sorry. I couldn't really make.
I will send the question at Zach's home channel.
Okay, feel free.
Cool. Well, if nobody has anything immediately, do you want to do a 3, 2, 1 hack to wrap? And then I can stay on for a few more minutes for anyone who wants to stick around.
Yeah, sure, that would be good.
And thank you all so much for having me. And really, like, all of you are the reason why Hack Club is so special. So thank you for making Hack Club the incredible community and space that it is.
Hey, Zach. So I kind of like just sent you a question in DM, because like I asked the question in the chat before, but like I think you missed the question.
Well, we were doing the questions for raising hands, but how would we do 3, 2, 1 hack? And then I can answer it right after that. Does that sound good?
Yeah, sure.
Cool. All right. Arpan and Neela, do you want to lead us in this?
I think that's about it.
You could do it. Yeah.
All right. Can everyone turn on their videos? Do you want to stick our hands out?
Yes.
Oh, I gotta step up. All right. Everybody, videos on. 3, 2, 1. Hey! Well, thank you all so much for having me. And yeah, I really appreciate the conversation. And really, like, please feel free to DM me anytime. My username's at ZRL. We do not have to have an AMA to talk to each other. I talk to like tons of hack clubbers a week. So like just DM me, we can totally set up a time, and I would love to keep the conversation going. And then
one more thing.
Go for our opponent, then I want to answer D Phenomenal's question too.
Yeah, like we were like when we were planning this AMA and discussing this, I like we thought that this could be about semi-annual or like a regular thing, like sort of a townhouse discussion, if you will. With Hack Club was just discussing what they want Hack Club to look like not on Slack, basically on on call and all, record and all that sort of stuff. So would you be interested?
Yes, absolutely,
Like a
yes.
recurring.
Yeah. Well,
I love the idea of doing this regularly. And D Phenomenal's question was, is it okay if I answered their question now?
Yeah, sure.
So his question was, hey Zach, or D Phenomenal, do you just want to ask it so everyone can hear you and then I can reply? Do we still have you?
Yeah, sure.
Go for it.
Okay, so we're starting to see like more and more act clubbers, like young people building cool startups and like shipping products that are being used by millions of users. Some of them have gone on to raise millions of dollars in funding to build their idea out. So I was kind of like wondering, does Act Club plan to support this kind of people with like events or specific programs in the future?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's when hack clubbers start companies and stuff, like it's pretty awesome. And it inspires me personally too, because for me, like I've always personally been interested in entrepreneurship. When I was in, I guess, third or fourth grade, I started a lemonade stand at my school where we sold lemonade stand outside the local middle school. And we ended up selling so much lemonade that we got shut down by the cops. Like the police showed up one day and demanded us to show our health license. And we didn't have a health license. We're like in like fourth grade. And they shut us down. And we went to like the town hall, we made this whole thing. And there ended up being a magazine article that was written about how our town shut down the lemonade stand that some kids were running. And it was actually so funny because I met someone who ended up becoming a donor to Hack Club like a year and a half or maybe 2.5 years ago. And he read that magazine article. He was like, you would never believe what's happening. There's these towns that are shutting down lemonade stands. And I was like, wait, which town? And it was me. So I really love when hack clubbers start stuff, and I think it's amazing. I think that as with everything, like it's really important that we have focus, because if Hack Club HQ tried to do everything, we would do everything, but we would also be bad at doing everything. And as like a small organization where like again, like Hack Club's budget is smaller than most primary schools. Like if we try to do everything, like there's no way we can do that. So we should focus our energies on the few things we think we can do really, really well that we don't think other people are doing. And with the broader startup community, there are tons of support mechanisms that do exist already. And there's a lot of economic incentive for people to create support mechanisms where they don't yet exist too. And like, you see that through like Y Combinator here in the US and a lot of the other programs here in the US, but now there's going to be a lot of really awesome stuff happening all across Africa and a lot of amazing things happening in India and South Asia. And I think that like, even in the areas where the ecosystem isn't super developed yet, it will become very developed over time because there's so much economic incentive around that, where nobody else is going to support high school hackers because it's so incredibly challenging to simultaneously have technical leadership, which you have to have if you're going to build something like Hack Club successfully. Like you actually have to know how to code if you're running the org and be able to raise nonprofit dollars. And unfortunately, in our space, with most of the different organizations that exist, they either have the technical leadership and can't get the philanthropy to be able to make it a reliable, growing group, or they can do much more commonly, they can do the philanthropy side, but they don't have the technical side. And then you have a really big nonprofit that actually doesn't have a lot of substance to it. And I think that like that's the thing Hack Club can kind of uniquely do better than anywhere else in the world. And I think that's where we should focus all our energies. So I think unfortunately, like I don't know if it makes sense for Hack Club to like do a lot directly as HQ to support startups. That said, I think this is like where Hack Club alumni should get active and like come together. And there's an incredible group of alumni from Hack Club who have built like some pretty incredible companies. Like for any of you who have an iPhone, like have you ever seen the Shortcuts app on the iPhone? That's built by someone who started one of the very first Hack Clubs. And like that was built by someone who was 18 at the time. And like, they're actually going to be coming to Hack Club in like a couple weeks, and they're going to be running one of the new open source projects. So like, there's this incredible community that exists, and I hope that the community can come together and support each other through startups in that way. And I know there's like a handful of Hack Club group houses in like San Francisco and New York City and stuff like that here in the US too. So I think that's my take. And I know it's not ideal, but I think it's important that we have the right focus.
Yeah, thank you so much for the answer. And yeah, thanks.
Yeah, you bet. Does anyone else have any last questions before we wrap up? And just go for it. Like, we're kind of outside the official part of AMA, so you can just unmute. But just
So, Zach, I just had a question.
I think Doric went first.
Okay,
Actually,
sorry.
I just
Yeah,
say
go.
leaving.
what is your favorite coffee? What is your favorite coffee type? Mine is Frappuccino.
My favorite coffee is black American coffee, so just drip coffee.
You didn't say a latte. That is unfortunate.
I know. Well, the problem is lattes are expensive, and also it's really hard to make a good latte, where like good drip coffee is pretty easy to make and it's cheap.
So I'll go with my
I like
right now.
coffee. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So, as being an Indian high schooler and a student of, 11th grade, there's a lot of pressure in studies. And India is a highly densely populated country. So there is more competition among peers in high school or regarding studies. So what advice will you give to students who are, who love to code and, contribute a lot in GitHub? Like I have 4,002 contributions in GitHub this year, I guess. So to balance the studies and this coding, the parents are always forcing us to study more because they think that our coding skills are useless if we do not get a BTech degree from a good engineering college or something. So what advice will you give us to balance this study and coding thing?
Unfortunately, I don't know the Indian experience that well. Like, I think the problem is like any advice I would give would apply more to like the American audience and the Indian audience. I think the universal thing, so like how to manage parents, I forget what do they call the RE exams? The college entrance exams that you have to take in India are totally different than the ones we take in the US, and it's much more hardcore.
Actually, the Indian exams are regarded as the hardest engineering exams in the world. So
yeah, I would totally believe that. And like, I think that like the thing is when you're a student, it can feel like the path you're on in your education journey is the only path available, because the whole world has conspired to gaslight you that is the only path available. And you're told from birth that like you must do all these different things. And the truth is the real world is not like that. And it's important that you do enough of like the common things that people recognize for them to take you seriously. But like the thing is as soon as you get through these like things that are ahead of you, whether it's like getting into IIT or not getting to IIT or like whatever the path for you might be, like the world is going to open up a lot more. You'll realize that there are a lot of different paths that exist for you. And like oftentimes like a lot of the things people say about what is required and what is not required, like you must have a degree from some institution for people to take you seriously, isn't nearly as true in the real world. The thing that is true and the thing that is valuable, no matter what age you are, no matter what you do in life, is having real skills, being a real, nice, genuine, authentic, kind, helpful, curious person, and having a network of people that care about you, believe in you, and want to support you, and vice versa. And if you find yourself in a situation where you have those three things, you're going to live a great life, that you're going to do amazing things. And I think that like that's going to take you really far. And that's more important than any college degree. That's more important than any like traditional path I could give you. And at the end of the day, that's what the traditional paths are trying to give you anyways. So how to navigate the conflict with like parents around the exams and stuff like that, I think any advice I try to offer would just be inauthentic. But if you put yourself in a position where you're going to end up with those three things, and I think having real technical skills is really, 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 really important, and something that schools don't necessarily give you. I think long term you'll end up in a great place no matter what path you take. the last thing I'll say on that is like, I think one thing coding really teaches us is that there are multiple ways to solve any one given problem. Like if you want to like build a backend for a website, there are like 1,000 ways to do that. You can do that in a functional language, in an imperative language. You can do that in Zig. You can do that in Rust. You can do that in Rails. You can do that in Python. Like there's like a bajillion ways to solve that problem. And in the same way that there's a bajillion ways to solve any coding problem, there's also a bajillion ways to like get a good education or live a meaningful life or get credentials. And I would just keep yourself open to what different paths might be available to you and not be afraid to do something a little untraditional if you think it'll get you where you need to go.
All right. And last question, that do you have any plans for reviving the Hack Club college program for Indian colleges? Because, that's the only way that hackers who graduate high school can, stay in touch with Hack Club or run a Hack Club in their college and hackathons as well.
No, we don't have plans. But what I would say is you should start a hacker group at your college. And a lot of Hack Club alumni start hacker groups at their colleges. And they're not Hack Club associated, but they have all the best parts of what make Hack Club awesome. And you can be the one to start that. Like I just linked to you. This is from, I just copied Sam's message he sent earlier in the chat. Check out Purdue Hackers. Like that's a group here in the US at one college that a Hack Club alum started. There's a lot of groups at different colleges and universities that Hack Clubbers run, and you can definitely keep the community going and start your own group when you make it to university. I think on HQ's side, it's like if we try and do everything, we're going to be good at nothing. We want to pick one thing and try and do it really, really, really well. And like you as a community member should build the space that you want to exist if HQ can't do it.
All right, I see that is the thing, but is it possible to get the Hack Club branding for college Hack Clubs or something? And will we receive the help from HQ while we face problems running the college Hack Club or something?
No, sorry. I wish we could do more. Maybe in the future we'll have something, but we don't have plans at the moment because we have to focus.
All right, thanks for answering my question.
Yeah, you bet. Any last questions before we wrap? And you can just unmute yourself and just go for it.
There's one in the chat, Zach.
So from Luander, he asked, in your opinion, what is a Hack Club subdivisions like Brazil for you? Like, what do you think of the things we do in our relation with Hack Club? I think that the stuff happening in Brazil and some of the stuff happening in India and some of the other countries where there's like local onboarding teams is awesome. Right now, like I kind of see Hack Club as like a grassroots community where people should create the space that they themselves want to be a part of. And if it's a little messy, I think that's okay. And when I say messy, I mean, like, I know Brazil has this, like, it's like kind of community driven, kind of HQ driven, it's a combination of both. And I think that's kind of awesome. And we should have a lot more stuff like that around the world. So it's very positive, but I think we're trying to feel it out to figure out how can we keep it authentic. You know what I mean? Any last questions for anyone before we wrap? The question is, why do we use Slack instead of Discord? The biggest reason is because Slack is a lot more moddable than Discord. And because when you're on Slack, people can make their own channels, where on Discord, people can't make their own channels. The other thing is that, like, I think the vibe that we want Hack Club to have is that Hack Club is kind of its own space. It's not one of many spaces. It's not one of many spaces as part of like I think on Discord, when you're in a Discord server, it's kind of like you're on Discord and one of the subspaces of Discord you're on is that specific server, where we want the vibe to be a little bit more of like you're in Hack Club and one of the subspaces in Hack Club is like whatever channel or personal channel or event or whatever it is you're a part of. But the biggest reason is because on Slack you can make your own channels. And it's more personal too, like what Jaden said. No announcements on the summer yet. All right, everyone. Well, I'm probably going to take it off, but thank you so much for having me. And thank you for hosting, Neela. I really appreciate your time. And thank you all for the conversation. It's been really meaningful.